Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company in Brown County, Indiana.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, it's time! 3 on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game! Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni! Full game for the win! Ayla's gone! Goodbye, touchdown, Indy! Woo! America! They got a football team now!
Pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, from the Hard Truth Studios, here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Friday. Grateful to have you along. Appreciate you, no matter where and how you're listening. If you are following along on YouTube, make sure you hit the like button for us, please. We appreciate it. I'm not even going to ask you to subscribe. Who cares about that? Just hit the like button. 4 more weeks of speculating. Exactly. It's like Groundhog Day, man. The AD came out and saw his shadow. So at least 4 weeks, probably. That's the thing. Because of where the time of year, like I keep saying, everybody's busy, everybody's working, everybody's under contract. You don't want your guy, the head of one of your biggest divisions, if you're a company, the head of that division, you don't want him talking to another company in the busiest time of your year. So that's where we are. Andy says he still thinks Scott Drew is a sneaky pick. Nobody is really talking about him because he turned down Kentucky last year. Sounds like there's more intrigue on his end about IU. Why is that? Why does it sound like there's more intrigue? I've not really seen anything. I'm not doubting you. I'm just asking you. I haven't seen anything, but ironic that you say that because I was thinking the same thing yesterday, that Scott Drew's name has just been quiet on this deal, and he's very attainable from a financial standpoint. He fits into that bucket that everybody else does, but who's not? There are some guys you eliminate, like Todd Golden. Let's see, TJ Ossenberger. I think he's got an extraordinarily high buyout, so he's off the table. Mick Cronin is stretching it. But the thing about this is, if it's not Dusty May, or even if it is Dusty May, there's no coach that's going to be hired now. And whether it is Dusty or it's Chris Beard, that there will not be a faction of fans that are disappointed, because every name that comes out, somebody says no to this guy, no to that guy, no. But the funny thing is, when people go off on like Rick Pitino and names like that, Rick Pitino is not coming to Indiana. First of all, he wouldn't come to Indiana. He's not going to come live in Bloomington. You don't know anything about Rick Pitino, first of all, if you're even thinking that. He's in Boston right now. He's in the Northeast. Where he's from, well, no, actually he's in New York, right? He's in I was thinking Boston College. St. John's. What is that in? Is that in Brooklyn? I can't remember. But he's in New York. He's not coming to Bloomington, Indiana. Number one. Number two, Indiana's not going to hire Rick Pitino. First and foremost, because he's 72 years old. That's why. They should have hired him last time around. Let me tell you how much they'd be winning right now. He's their winner. I don't care. You talk about the cheating stuff. He didn't cheat any more than Mike Krzyzewski cheated. Adidas did. All the other crap that goes on, those guys purposely remove themselves from that. Now, yeah, it's a whole different world now, unfortunately. Just like I don't get the unbelievable negativism that is towards Kelvin Sampson. He made phone calls, text messages, and he was trying to win. You had other people that were doing far worse than that at big name schools, getting away with it, and yet the Indiana fan base just lambasts him. But he was a hell of a coach, I'll tell you. The best coach that Indiana's had since Bob Knight. All right, like David says, Bruce Pearl and Chris Beard are proven coaches, would be his first two calls. Well, again, I think the age factor in on Bruce Pearl, and we've talked about Chris Beard, but Zach Osterman, the Indy Star beat writer, joins us now. And Zach, how has your week been, man?
Hey, how we doing?
Pretty good, brother. About yourself?
Can't complain. Just trying to stay warm.
Yeah, how were the kiddos this week?
Oh, good. Just banging along.
That time of year, yeah, especially when it's outside. You got to keep them inside and keep them entertained. Of course, Indiana, a major game this weekend with Purdue coming into town on Sunday. Unbelievably, they still have a shot of making the NCAA tournament. Of course, that's going to require them to do some things that may be likely or unlikely, but they have the opportunity to do it. And after the performance they gave in West Lafayette, there's no reason to think that they can't. This is a Purdue team that has lost 3 straight for the first time in 5 years. Can Indiana make 4? You've got a Purdue team that desperately needs a win because they're trying to stay in the Big Ten race. Indiana trying to stay out of the bottom of the Big Ten and perhaps find a slot in the NCAA tournament. So there's all kinds of things that are on the line for this game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think people watching, listening here will know kind of where Indiana is, broadly speaking, in the course of its season and the complexion of kind of what's going on. I am fascinated by Purdue. I mean, this is obviously a team that has won, what is the phrase I'm looking for? A program that has won the Big Ten, I think, each of the last 2 years. And, that they were not shy about saying their stated goal this season was to make it 3 in a row. And for a while there, I mean, they started 11-2. You kind of had some explainable defeats. Penn State was a different team back in December. Ohio State at home was not necessarily a great game, but, you backstopped that with 4 straight wins, including a blowout of Michigan. But now they've lost 3 in a row, and I don't know that they've necessarily been horrible in any of these 3 games, but one way or the other, they are kind of, for the first time in a long time, on the outside of the Big Ten title race looking in. And I'm not saying they can't win the league, but it's going to take something pretty extraordinary at this point with, Michigan having, I think, 4 of its last 6 games at home. Washington's got 3 of its last 5 at home, plus a trip to Minnesota in there. Point is, you got an Indiana team that is just kind of desperate to feel like it's got a foothold in the season that it can stand on to try and attack these last 2 weeks and maybe build a bit more of an NCAA tournament argument. And you've got a Purdue team that is, suddenly, I mean, I don't think it's unfair to say, frankly, reeling a little bit. And it's going to be fascinating to see how both of these teams respond to that kind of environment on Sunday afternoon, especially given, we know what this rivalry atmosphere is going to be. We know what it's going to look like if it's a competitive game down the stretch. I'm just fascinated that you got 2 teams that could really, really use a win for different reasons here, and I'm fascinated to see how that goes.
Yeah, a quick question off the reins here, not to get off the subject, but the Fear of God uniforms scrapped by the women's team, and then apparently now the men's as well. Those are not going to be worn. For those of you, that's just something that Adidas came out with, an alternate uniform that was announced, but now it's going away. Any idea what that is? No reason has been given.
I know that all I know is, and I don't want to speculate too much, but I have had readers contact me expressing concerns over and I've not understood it in full, but the connections between Kanye West, who's obviously become a very controversial sort of personality, and this particular clothing line. Of course, if I'm not, I don't want to speak out of school here, but I believe Adidas and Kanye West used to have a partnership that Adidas canceled. But I think there may still be some sort of loose ties here. Does that factor in? I mean, I asked about it. I have not gotten a response, but that is kind of the only thing that I would be aware of that would sort of explain it. So, I mean, again, I don't want to speculate. I guess I just sort of did. Forgive me. But I'm also just presenting like I've had readers contact me with these concerns. So that's kind of the best I can sort of guess.
Well, at least it's not completely, it's not see-through. So I guess we have that going for us in reference to his girlfriend's, soon to be ex-wife now, I guess, what she wore to the Emmys. Also, the Crown Tournament. I was not even aware of this for a while. And the Crown Tournament, for those of you that have been listening for the last couple of days, 16 teams that do not make the NCAA tournament from the Big Ten, the Big East, and the Big 12 will play in Las Vegas in a tournament that is kind of not replacing, but in lieu of the NIT. But this has been a partnership with Fox and AEG, I believe. But what my question is, do conference teams have the option to opt out of this since this is a conference sponsored event?
Yeah, I have talked to some people about this. It's the last I checked, no one's really clear because there are some, as you talked about there. It's a Fox specific thing, and obviously Fox wields a substantial amount of a sort of influence with all three of those conferences, but the Big Ten being the most sort of powerful one. So I don't know if it would be quite as simple to turn down a place in this tournament as it might be to turn down, for example, the NIT, which Indiana did a year ago, and Indiana was hardly alone in doing. That being said, I would be pretty surprised if Indiana winds up in the frame for something like this. I would be a little bit surprised if there was not some way for Indiana, if it wanted to, and I would think it would, given its current circumstances, be able to sort of maneuver out of participating in some just for this year, and basically just saying, hey, listen, we've got obviously more sort of pressing short and long-term concerns here that we got to try and go attack. We just can't, can this be a year that if this does apply to us, that we just sort of, make sure it doesn't apply to us, because we got to be ready to move quickly in the event that, a prime target falls out of the NCAA tournament or something like that. So, I mean, the last I checked with anyone, no one was really sure exactly how this was going to work or exactly how it was going to affect Indiana. But I guess I would be a little surprised, given the specific circumstances around Indiana's season and off season this year, if this was going to go, if this was not going to be this sort of thing that Indiana might try to politely, sidestep.
Yeah, and I would think that even no matter what the official situation is, that when you're in a situation like Indiana is at this moment, that they could reach out to, whether it would be the league or Fox, and say, hey, we're in a different kind of a situation here in the middle of a coaching search, and we would like to punt on this year. I don't think that would be an issue. I guess maybe that's not true. Maybe Fox would like to have Indiana in there for the ratings, because they still are a ratings getter. So
I'm sure that, yes. I'm sure they would. Yes.
So yeah, I still think that they would bite the bullet and say, yeah, okay, because the importance of the school, the program, and all that comes first, and continuing on the season in a tournament like that, I don't know how much there is to gain from that, how much the players would be locked in.
Yeah, I mean, again, and I think there's some monetary incentive to this, and I don't remember if that is like an NIL thing or if it's just like a wider, sort of thing. But it is a little bit. It's supposed to be styled in a way that makes it more appealing than the NIT. Like that's essentially the point here. I mean, basically, the way to think about this is Fox has its arms around 3 of the 5 big brands in college basketball: the Big Ten, the Big East, and the Big 12. The ACC and the SEC are obviously ESPN sort of, related conferences or tied to ESPN
entities, or
yeah. Fox does not have any role. Fox has clearly been pushing harder into the college basketball space in the last 10 years. We've seen the expansion of national games on Fox, Fox pregame and studio shows. Fox has become particularly more ingrained, I think it's fair to say, with the Big Ten and the Big East, 2 conferences that have tremendous, sort of basketball heritage. The Big 12 more and more so now, too, bringing Arizona in, and and even maybe some programs like Utah that are secondary but have some history in basketball. But it has clearly been a priority for Fox in general to just open up the college space. We can even extend this to college football. Fox does not have any role in the NCAA tournament. And if you look at the sports calendar, once college basketball ends, there's really not a lot for Fox for a while. There's obviously national baseball games as the season gears up, but that's about it. The Fox is not involved with the NBA. It's had some involvement in the past with some summer soccer tournaments and things, but those things are not even annual. I think it's fair to say this is Fox trying to sort of carve out for itself some sort of opportunity in the college basketball postseason space. And the way that Fox wants to do that is to ensure that it gets big brands, because I don't think it is unfair to say that while I think the teams that make the NIT, deserve to have opportunities to go on and win games and win things, nobody gets excited about the Cinderella idea in the NIT the way they do it. If UNC Asheville wins its conference, but then loses its conference tournament, except in extreme cases like the Robert Morris Kentucky game about 10, 11, 12 years ago, nobody's getting excited if a mid-major beats a high major in the NIT, because the mid-major is not going to be cast as Cinderella in the same way, and the high majors in the NIT, because they're not that good to begin with. This to me is Fox looking for a way to say, let's get premium brands on the screen from multiple conferences in a postseason that isn't built to rival the NCAA tournament, but is built to give Fox some kind of stake in the college basketball postseason. And there's a whole host of reasons for that. Near term, it makes money. Maybe it's something that eventually usurps the NIT and becomes kind of the premier sort of other postseason tournament. Long term, maybe it gives Fox a bit more of a foothold in the sport, which is eventually, I think we can all tell, going to be touched by expansion and, consolidation and Power 4 autonomy and Power 2 autonomy, in the same way that we see the playoff sort of fiddled with over and over again. I know there are already some suggestions about expanding the NCAA tournament. Well, if Fox creates a bit of a carve out for itself in the landscape of the college basketball postseason, then maybe that gets Fox a seat at the table at some point down the line, particularly if Fox is limiting its tournament to just the high majors just the again, the quote unquote sort of big brands. And yeah, if you were Fox and Indiana came up just shy of the NCAA tournament, I mean, imagine a world where Fox in its first year of that tournament could get like, maybe Indiana, USC, and Ohio State. I mean, those would be meaningful sort of brands with fan bases that would engage and follow, and it would be a big deal. But I just think that from Indiana's perspective this year, I don't see how that benefits IU at all, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. The coaching search, of course, continues, and it will continue for several weeks as everyone that would be a potential candidate is busy under contract and serving another university right now, so they can't be spoken with. But Indiana using the search committee this time around on the basketball coaching hire. When's the last time? It's been a while since they've done that. Todd mentioned Clarence Doniger, so I guess you have to go back to then. I don't think that they've done that much in the last couple. But
you mean a search firm?
Yes. What did I say?
Indiana's engaged a search firm somewhat consistently. I'm almost certain they did when they hired Archie Miller. I don't remember if they did when they hired Mike Woodson. Obviously, that was a slightly different process. COVID was involved in the consideration then. They did engage Turnkey when they hired Kurt Signetti. So, I mean, broadly speaking, it's not a new thing for Indiana to engage a search firm, an outside firm. I'm not talking about a committee. I'm talking about an outside firm.
Right. Pardon me if I said that. That was a
that has been pretty consistently common for Indiana, particularly its bigger coaching searches. I think the smaller ones, like when Indiana hires a women's soccer coach, things like that, you're not necessarily going to go, pay Turnkey's fat fee for that. But I think that the bigger searches are or have been pretty consistently involving search firms in the last several years.
And just for the search firm is not necessarily coming up with candidates, right? It is more about vetting candidates, more about finding things that the university may not have the ability to do, just the minutia of things that goes along with that. Am I correct in that? Or do they also offer up suggestions on potential candidates?
Well, they can do a lot of different things. So they can number one, help you revise your own thinking. And, I think Scott Dolson's process in hiring Kurt Signetti, I think is going to wind up being very instructive in his process in hiring whoever replaces Mike Woodson.
And that would happen very fast too.
Well, but what you found out after the fact was that in the weeks before he fired Tom Allen, anticipating the possibility that might be the eventual outcome of that season, Dolson asked a group of people he trusted sort of within the department to do a forensic analysis of Indiana's last 25 or 30 years in football and say what worked when we were good. What were the common markers? What were the common threads? Then he asked them to look at some similar programs like Illinois, Kansas, Kentucky, I think either North Carolina or Duke, maybe both, and basically asked the same question. When these programs have been consistently competitive over a period of time in sort of the modern iteration of college football, what has worked? What has been consistent? Sort of almost like thinking about it with that old, sort of like the Moneyball way of thinking about what is it? What are the common threads that seem to bind all really good teams together? Well, one of the things in baseball is they get on base. Some teams do it by hitting home runs. Some teams do it by getting walks. Some teams do it, with singles and doubles. But most good offenses, like the one constant is they all get on base. Dolson was looking for some of those same markers in his own program's recent history and in the recent history of like programs. That helped Indiana. Kind of build out an ideal profile that it could then talk with Turnkey about, and Turnkey could say, okay, well, let's, have you thought about this? Maybe we polish off you this idea is kind of vague. Can we polish it a little bit? And then Turnkey can take that back into the sort of the search pool, the candidate pool, and say, these are some people that we think fit what you're talking about here, that it might be worth talking to. The other thing search firms can do, the big one, and this isn't the only thing they do, but I think it's probably, if we're talking about their services in a search specifically, this one is probably the most valuable, is a search firm can create a layer of plausible deniability for everyone. So let's live in the world where Indiana, Turnkey and Indiana together refine this list of criteria. They find Curt Cignetti, the head coach at James Madison. He probably fits a lot of those. Maybe you should talk to him. And Indiana says, yeah, let's, that's not a bad idea. Well, what the search firm can do is the search firm can go to Cignetti's representation, to an agent or agents. Some coaches have multiple, and say, would your client be interested in discussing this job? And if the answer is no, then an AD never picked up a phone and a coach never took a call. And at the end of the process, everyone can say in complete faith, the only person I interviewed was this person. Or on the other side, I never interviewed for a single job. And then if, let's say, that initial meeting goes well, as we know it did with Curt Cignetti and Scott Dolson, then the search firm and the agency can trade back and forth some very basic ideas about, okay, well, so what would it take then? It seems like there's some good chemistry here. Seems like there's a connection. Maybe we should take this to the next step. Before we do, what kind of considerations would your man need? Years, dollars, staffing pool, resource commitments. And then everyone can kind of say, oh, well, then, we can't do that. We can't commit that. There's no need to go any further here. Or that sounds good. We think we can make that work. And then you basically can draw up almost like a group of candidates to say, well, this one has these pluses and these minuses, and it will, the overall sort of dollar figure to hire them will be this. And then this one is, this, and this one is this, and you can kind of select from a few. The search firm just helps you structure your search from front to back in a way that helps you move efficiently and often discreetly, so that when the time comes, nobody has to feel like they were ever anybody's second choice. Nobody has to feel like they were ever sort of dragged out into sort of the public domain for discussing something or just entertaining something very loosely, very briefly. Everyone can save some face. Everyone moves a little bit more efficiently through the process. And ideally, if you're Indiana, the process obviously yields results.
And when it comes time that you can do something, you can do so quickly, whether that being the prospects season comes to a close. You can do things within a few days of that once they have been able to make any contact with or have conversations with their end, whether it's their team, their institution, and that can move rather quickly, dependent upon when their season comes to a close.
Well, and that's the other part of it too, is the search firm can probably help you, if everyone's kind of done it right, can help you structure things so that when the time comes, because there is a bit of a tight timeline here that everyone's got to honor and try and follow. The search firm can help you set up the infrastructure or the apparatus so that when Coach A, who is your top target, and there's already been some discussion behind the scenes of money won't be a problem, resources won't be a problem. There's probably some alignment here in the way the coach and the AD and the university and the department are thinking about how to tackle the challenge of being more successful at basketball, that whenever that coach's season ends, everything can move more quickly. And you don't have to wait days and days to make certain contacts and try and set certain things up that you can, damn is near just kind of have the plane waiting basically to get somebody to an interview to get through those next steps to the point where it on the back end, it looks like what it did with the Curt Cignetti coaching search, where there's a Zoom on either Sunday night or Monday morning. I can't remember which one it is. And by Friday afternoon, Curt Cignetti is being introduced as Indiana's next head coach.
And the importance of getting this one right it cannot be overstated. But if that does happen, Scott Dolson is going to put himself squarely on the front of Indiana's Mount Rushmore of athletics, because he will have done the impossible and not returning Indiana basketball to a great place, which that's to me a matter of time of getting the right guy, but doing so along with having previously turned Indiana football, which was a breathing corpse, into a live, living, viable program that will be fighting for CFP spots.
Yeah, I mean, it I don't know, like it's Indiana basketball. I've done it, and this is not necessarily answering exactly your question, forgive me, but Indiana, I have compared Indiana to I've compared basketball to other sort of experience, searches, program building experiences, whatever, that I've covered at Indiana. And I think that's dangerous because basketball will always be a little bit different here. Like it just always will be.
It's in the DNA. It's in the DNA of the state and people that grew up.
There's I remember hearing a story after Kevin Wilson's second season as head coach. He went 4-8. Indiana, I think, lost 4 of those 8 games by like a combined 10 points. But there were some ugly losses in there. They couldn't stop Navy. They gave up a game-winning field goal in the last second to Ball State. And the prevailing sentiment that Wilson walked into his sort of postseason meeting with Fred Glass was like, I'm going to kind of get raked over the coals here because we're 2 years in and we're still building. And instead, Fred said, I see it. I see the progress. It's moving in the right direction. I'm happy with it. Just keep building. I don't know that that's the answer you'd get in the same situation from basketball, especially now, where the program has gotten to. I mean, I've pointed this out numerous times, but, Mike Davis got 6 years. If you sort of treat the 3 seasons at the beginning, kind of as their own thing, Tom Crean got 6 years. Archie Miller only got 4. Mike Woodson only got 4. Every subsequent coach here is working with a little bit shorter fuse before people sort of say, well, then maybe this isn't the right decision. Maybe this isn't the solution. We just need to go on and, we got to take it to somebody else now because this isn't going to work. When you couple that to the cultural importance of basketball here, and frankly, in fairness, the amount of money that I think Indiana is going to commit to basketball, with its next head coach in terms of revenue sharing and NIL and all those sorts of things. I just think that it is dangerous. Even saying this as someone who has done it a lot in the last couple of weeks, it is dangerous, I think, to compare IU basketball and the process that's going to lead IU to its next head basketball coach, whoever that is. And then also, frankly, the resources provided, the expectations attached, all those sorts of things to anything else, even to, Kurt Cignetti. But listen, Kurt Cignetti, I mean, the process that leads Indiana to Kurt Cignetti specifically. But listen, all we have is the lived experiences, right? Like, I mean, that's the best we could do. So I say it's dangerous, but I'm going to keep doing it because I don't really have a better way of going about it. But, I think it is going to be fascinating to see where Indiana lands. And I also think it's going to be fascinating to see what it looks like next, because I think there might be some elements, for example, like staffing and infrastructure around Mike Woodson that Indiana may want to keep. Whether we're talking about the people in those positions now or somebody else filling those positions. I think Indiana might like the idea of a more NBA-like structure around its coach and its program than what it's had in the past.
I'm assuming that does not include having multiple consultants on the payroll, but there seems like there's a little bloated there. But what's up next for you, brother? Obviously, you've got the Purdue game on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just I think that's kind of everything at this point, is just tracking the way this season ends. Obviously, the way the women's season ends, the women picked up a really, really important
Huge.
win last
Huge.
night. Obviously, already had a fairly compelling tournament case, but I think after that sort of 3-game losing streak, to backstop that with the win over Purdue, which was of course important for Indiana, rivalry wise, and also because Purdue is just not any good and you need to beat them.
Right.
But then
Ohio
also
State only lost 3 times on the season.
Yeah,
and
no,
Indiana just obliterated them.
high quality win, I think, was really important. And that is the kind of win that a team that maybe has any sort of bubble doubts in a tournament setting late in the season, that's the kind of win that punches a ticket, so to speak.
That's the kind of win that Indiana men's basketball has kind of been looking for. They got one at Michigan State, but they just haven't done it enough. Zach Osterman, the insider for the Indy Star, on the IUBB. Make sure you are giving him a follow, be a subscriber, keep local papers alive. Check out Zach's videos. He talks in depth about the search, and make sure you're giving him a follow. Appreciate you, brother, as always.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jim.
Thank you, Zach. Oh, we'll see you on Sunday. Hello, sports fans. Jim Coyle with Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you for stopping by our YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the subscribe and notifications toggle so you never miss a thing. All of our content up here every day. Looking forward to it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the radio.